to the PFC podcast. The views and opinions you are about to hear are the speakers and do not necessarily reflect those of anyone else. Now on to the podcast.
Welcome back to the PFC podcast. This is Dennis, and today I'm with Andy. How are you doing today?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, you're coming from all the way from Australia or New Zealand?
Yes, I'm in Australia at the moment. Obviously from the UK. I moved over here about a couple of years ago. And work over here now.
Perfect. So, since it's the first time on the podcast, would you mind doing just a quick introduction to yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Andy. I've recently left the military after 22 years serving as initially a Royal Marines Commando. And then for the last 16 years of the 22, I was a UK Special Forces paramedic. I had the fortune and privilege of serving, obviously, through an intense time of war fighting in the Middle East. So I ended up deploying over there on 6 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. Eventually, the cycle was broken as I got promoted and then sent to Special Forces Training Command, where I ended up being one of the lead medical instructors, teaching all the SF medics and operators. And also I was the lead for the guys doing their training on the jungle phase, which is obviously where I found my love of going to the jungle.
Nice. Well, it's not your Afghanistan experience I'm hoping for. It's the jungle. So I can imagine this happens all the time, and it happens in other environments as well, is you get a high-speed young medical provider, whether that be a doc or paramedic, and they get the bug to work pre-hospital, and they just load up their bag and go. But I'm sure you definitely know more than I do. The jungle will eat your lunch for you. So would you mind just telling me a little bit about what it's like working in the jungle?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's an area that is not very well explored. Some of the issues that we get there is you do get keen medics that want to join an expedition or they want to deploy to the jungle. They go over there, and if they're unprepared or they've never operated in the jungle before as an individual, then trying to operate over there as a medic with a role and a skill to be able to provide to a team or an expedition, you're absolutely going to struggle. It's pretty hostile. If you're claustrophobic, you're going to struggle in there. You're constantly wet. Your administration needs to be absolutely on top. Otherwise, the insects will eat you alive. And you'll just go hungry, you'll just get bitten, you'll be sore, and it's so debilitating that you'll be 3-4 days in and you'll just want to get out there. You'll do anything to get out. I've seen that a few times with guys that have gone unprepared.
Yeah. So, obviously, what kind of skills do you need? I mean, I can squirt somebody with a hose, now they're wet. Hot is pretty easy to find. But I mean, just the combination of skills, survival skills, just to handle your own business. Like, I guess, how would you be prepared, or how did you get prepared?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be an infantry soldier beforehand. So I was Royal Marines Commando. So we, as infantry, we deployed to the jungle, and we were kind of gradually brought in and brought along before getting thrown in there. And yes, we would get our survival training, looking at all the essential elements of how to do shelter, fire, and try and do water acquisition in the jungle and food if you could. But most of it was about your personal admin, like trying to keep the stuff that needs to be dry. Right, that's probably one of the biggest problems that you have. You can only carry a limited amount of kit. Okay, it's hot, it's humid in the jungle. A pack that you could normally carry in a temperate environment, you can't carry in the jungle because you'll just go down with heat stroke or some heat exhaustion, which is not ideal. The routines are slightly different as well. You really need to look after yourself, as in look after your feet, look after your body, make sure you eat properly, make sure you're drinking properly. Otherwise, your feet will just crumble, and your body will just fall. It will literally fall apart. I've seen guys with like horrific rubs from their weapon, from their packs, from their weapon, just because their skin hasn't been looked after. So yeah, It's a ruthless place. And again, if anyone's ever been to the jungle who may have potential mental health issues or maybe struggling, we'll absolutely bring it out. It's one of the common things that I've had to deal with is people just going bit doolally out in the jungle saying they can't hack it, they don't like being enclosed in there, and they just want to get out because it's quite overwhelming and overstimulating.
Okay. So, I mean, other than just basic hygiene type things, like what other things do you need to be prepared to do or take care of?
Well, I mean, before we get into the medical elements, like I said, your role, if you are the allocated medic for an expedition or a team going out with the military, then you need to think about other stuff that's not normally within your scope, maybe. So as a medic, you'll probably get tasked with providing the environmental health for the team. And this comes around to being medical anyway, because if the latrines are placed in the incorrect position, like upstream from your water supply or too close to where the food tent is going to be, so you're going to bring in diseases and vermin, and that's a problem. So you actually need to be on top of environmental health. You then need to be on top of, it sounds really petty, but it's almost like school attitude. You need to make sure the lads wash their hands. And it sounds really silly, but as the medic, you need to stand there and make sure and name and shame people that don't wash their hands. And the reason's pretty simple. If these guys don't put the latrines in the correct place, if the guys don't wash their hands, then you're going to get infections and disease outbreaks. If they get that, it's going to spread like wildfire in the jungle, and then you've compromised not only a couple of individuals, you're going to compromise the mission, the expedition. Right? And actually, to be in the jungle, it's expensive. Right? So on a larger scale, it has an effect at a strategic level. That if you don't get these basics right on the lower level, then it's going to fall apart all the way to the top. And they're going to come down and look at you as the medic and go, "Hey man, what were you doing? Like, were you not making sure that the guys were doing this stuff?" And you're like, yeah. "I'm the medic." I'm like, yeah,
I do medical.
Yeah,
I'm a people person.
It's all on you. So you have a lot of responsibility as a medic. There's no going to one boss to another. Like whoever's leading that expedition or whoever's in charge of that trip, you have direct comms with them because you need that constant feedback just to make sure that the guys are okay. Because you see them away a lot of the time when they come to you, they can take their brave face off and they're like, "Hey doc, I'm hurting here. Like I'm feeling ill because of heat exhaustion, because they've been run too hard, or I'm not looking after my feet. Can you help me out?" And then you need to just be honest with the command and go, "Hey, I've got a few guys now and they're being run hard." Obviously on a selection phase, like I did with Special Forces in the UK, it is hard. So you need to kind of weigh it up and go, man, it is hard. You just need to keep going. And I'm going to do whatever I can to keep you going. But on a kind of a less intense scenario, let's say you're on an expedition where it shouldn't really be like that, then you really need to communicate that to the guys and say, "Hey, listen, probably don't run them out. Give them a day off, and let them recuperate. Otherwise, you're going to run them into the ground, and people are going to start collapsing." That just promotes so many other issues. We'll talk about later on. Yeah.
And it's always a fine line between smart and hard, you know. Just knowing, like, hey, this is. Like, we're getting stupid now. Let's dial it back a bit.
Yeah, and sometimes it's down to you as the medic to pipe up and say that, which is hard because medics, we don't tend to have the highest rank in a hierarchical structure. But you really need to step up to that command and go, "Hey, listen, I get it that we've got a goal here, but guys are going to fall apart in the next couple of days, and you're going to have no one." So.
Yeah, but speaking about communications, like Triple Canopy Jungle is not known for being great for communications. Like I'm guessing you're doing, you have backups on top of backups when it comes to being able to reach up and out in case something real bad happens.
Yeah, my communications is a constant issue. I think what you'll find is because a lot of the time for the jungle, you can have a helicopter insertion. Somewhere at some point, you've found enough space to get a helo in. which is great because what you'll find is that people will then set up satellite comms in that space. So you either find a gap in the canopy to get satellite comms out on the right angle, depending on where you are, or you try and find a way where the river bends in a certain direction so that you can be on the bank and then get your angle up on your Harris or whatever comms you're using, shooting up so that you can get comms out. Because as we know, most radio comms are not very good within the jungle, and we struggle. How we kind of combat that as well is then your pre-planning, your beginning of the day briefs need to be bomb-proof, right, so that guys, A, they don't get lost in the first place, and then B, well, what do we do if this happens? So a lot of it, so instead of communicating, if they get a casualty, they know to head down. So let's say that to the river, because the only way in or out is going to be by boat, rather than trying to, if they can't get comms, then head to the river. Right, and everyone knows that, hey, listen, if there is going to be a casualty or we're getting crackles or we get any sign or communication that there's a casualty, get the boat out, patrol the river, and we know that the guys are going to be in that river somewhere. So that's essential.
Yeah. So, obviously having your own skills to be able to operate, pre-planning, like communications is always hard. So having backups for those things. What other things would you try and prep before we launch? Like, obviously you're going to have to know your guys. What are their backgrounds, what are their medical history type things?
Yeah. So this is actually a huge part of it. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. I think they do not prepare to go to the jungle. So before you even attempt to enter that canopy, you need to get all your admin in order. Again, I'm trying to do a crossover here of what you're doing in civilian world and military, because I've done both. So yeah, like fitness certificates from their doctor to say that they're fit and healthy to go. So you have a kind of a reassurance, and legally, we're talking civilian wise now, like you need to be covering yourself legally. You need to know the guy's previous medical history. Do they have any current mental health conditions? Because guys can still be operational, but the jungle might just be a trigger for them. So you just need to be aware of that. You need to make sure that the vaccinations are all up to date. So if you go to the jungle, you need specific vaccinations in some areas, especially like Borneo for like Japanese encephalitis. Is one of the ones I can think of. Rabies is another one, that vaccination. And then anti-malarials, depending on where you're going, potentially make sure that everyone's got their anti-malarials, that is the right anti-malarial for them. So, because some guys react badly to them, right? So we need to make sure that it's the right one. And then considerations like, hey, you're getting your anti-malarials, what have you got? I've got Doxy. Okay, we're going to be in the sun quite a lot. A side effect of Doxy, obviously, is going to be hypersensitivity to sun. Is that a good idea? Is there anything else we can put you on? But then it's good having Doxy because it's like a broad spectrum antibiotic. It may work for you. So the nicks and cuts that you get in from being in the jungle, it may work. So it's kind of that trade-off that you need to do. And the biggest one is probably you as the medics, right? You are the expert. If I ever go to a different country, like last month I was in Namibia, earlier on in the year I was in Costa Rica doing expeditions, and I would honestly spend a good week going through online resources, finding out as much information as I can for that area, checking on websites such as the WHO, the CDC, the Bureau of Consular Affairs. If you're in the States, if you're in the UK, you've got Travel Health Pro, Foreign Commonwealth Office, and if you're in Australia, the Smart Traveller. Okay, they're my go-to, and it doesn't matter what country you're from. Check all those other ones I've just mentioned too, because they've got loads of information, and all of that information is slightly different. Some of it's overlapping, but you just get a great picture of kind of what's common in that area, what are the threats, what's happening to people. I like the CDC, it's got emerging diseases on there, so you can look at the country that you're going to and the surrounding countries as well, ideally, especially in kind of Africa, because obviously like diseases don't understand borders, right? So it always makes me laugh when you got countries side by side, and then you got like the west side and the country and the east side of the country, like, we have it and we don't, and you're like,
Yes.
there's an imaginary border there, but we don't have that disease. So a lot of it's reliant upon what that government of that country is reporting as well. So you just need to take it with a pinch of salt that if the country next door is reporting a load of cases of malaria or dengue, then the country next to it probably has it too. As I'm honest with you, I think I take a little of a pinch of salt. So kind of, and then before you go in there, making sure that your kit and equipment is prepped and good to go, and you've got enough waterproof bags to secure it, because especially if you've got small electronics for monitoring, then you don't want any of that stuff getting wet. And you really have to kind of skim down on what you're going to take, because if you're going out on a patrol, you're probably going to want to go light, which the medic never goes light. They can't, physically can't. So you're going to want to go as light as you can. And that's hard sometimes, especially for soft medics who have an expanded breadth of capability. So therefore, with that, normally comes more kit and more equipment. So trying to dish out the lower level kit, make sure that everyone's got their IFAC. If everyone's got their IFAC, then do you really need to take IFAC stuff yourself? Maybe not. Right? It's a strong shout as a medic saying, hey, I'm not going to take any tourniquets. And everyone's like, you're nuts. But you're like, but everyone has a tourniquet. Everyone has two. So why do I need to take tourniquets? Be the medic. I have done it now. I do it now. If I know all my guys have got their IFACs on them, I don't take tourniquets, man. If I know all my guys have got, I don't take chest shields, stuff like that, nasal airways. They've all got their own nasal airways. Whether they're correctly sized or not, is a huge debate, as we know now. So, and then now they're correctly packed, and then tell the guys like how to pack the kit, and then maybe do some training with them before going away on how to look after their feet. It's the simplest of things, and most infantries get taught it. But I think, especially in the jungle, if you do not do it, you skip 2 days of looking after your feet, then you'll be so debilitated that you're going to have to get a Kazivac out. And that's just horrific. Trying to get someone out of the jungle, which we can talk about later on, is horrendous. Especially can be horrendous. So there's a lot to think about before you even step foot in that jungle. So and I think that's where a lot of people fall down.
Yeah. I mean, do you cross-load things like fluids and things like that?
Yeah, so fluids. This is one of the problems as well, is the jungle. When we're looking at, say, like prolonged care, the jungle is probably one of those places that if it can go horribly wrong, it can go horribly wrong in the jungle. A lot of the places where we go to in the jungle, there's no flying rescue. The military are very fortunate that a lot of the time the guys have people with nogs and they can fly at night. They can come get you. Like when I'm in Costa Rica, there's no one coming to get you if it gets dark. You're there overnight. So kind of understanding that, and then in a prolonged field care sense, that then you just need to make sure you've got all that kit and it's distributed among the guys. And then imagine that your main kind of issue that you're going to have in the jungle is either heat or trauma. Oxygen, stuff like oxygen is just a no-go. Like, you can't justify anyone carrying that in a jungle environment. It's too heavy, it's too bulky. Everyone's got operational kit or expedition kit. There's no way. Maybe you could have let's say a dump at the HLS site, where you can just have a couple of bottles there. That may work, but if you're truly in canopy, absolutely no. So that's going to have to get scrapped. Fluids and heavier, bulkier items, just share it amongst your team. And as med, we always heavily rely on the guys to help out as individuals, and definitely with the kit and equipment. So,
I mean, like talking to the other guys, nobody ever seems to mind us carrying their batteries or carrying anything else for them. So, like, this is for you. You carry this, Yeah,
I always laugh at that. Like, someone will say, oh, hey, Andy, can you take an extra couple of mags or a couple of batteries? And I'm like, yeah, cool. Can you take this fluid bags? And then we're all end up carrying the same weight anyway. So, but again, like, how many? It's always in like how much fluid do you need to sustain a casualty in the jungle for a while? I mean, just probably maintenance fluids alone, without any other fluids for whatever medical condition they're going to get or the trauma. It's a lot actually. So yeah, I think it's a case of kind of throwing out what you need to take that you're probably not going to carry on a table in front of all the guys and go, hey, this needs to come. And it's kit for you. It's not for me. Take what you can. And, you know, some of the guys are pretty good. They'll grab a fluid bag. They'll grab something and then, they'll shove it in their packs. And the deepest, darkest parts, get the guys on side.
Right. So, you have obviously had a lot of experience, both military side and civilian expedition side. What are like the common mistakes that just like flag you as rookie?
Okay. How you can tell straight away when you normally get into somewhere and you set up, you normally have kind of a base camp, and then from your base camp you'll patrol out. Like you'll go in all the directions, doing whatever you need to do, whether it's a military patrol or whether it's an expedition with scientists where they need to shoot out and do their thing. Setting up a hammock, right? Just how they clear, if they even clear the area, they can gauge how far the trees need to be apart, how they secure their hammock, or because of the specific knots that you need to know, like maybe like a trucker's hitch and a couple of other things to be able to secure your hammock. What hammock they've brought out with them. Because I'm not going to try and name a brand, but there's certain brands that it's the only brand that I would only ever advise to take into the jungle. And how to put that up correctly. Because, you know, if you're watching them and they're just completely all over the place and they don't know what they're doing, and you're like, you've never been a jungle man. And the problem with that is if they mess it up and it rains all night, then they're going to be wet. Bear in mind that they're probably in their dry kit, especially if they're doing a wet-dry routine, which if you're in the military, you are absolutely doing that. If you're on an expedition, you're leaving to it. Some of them just like learning the hard way, and you're like, hey man, I told you. But if they don't have that cover, then they're going to be wet. All the kit's going to be wet. And then you're just going to see that person is just going to slowly die inside over the next few days. So that's the first one. And then, like, how the personal administration is, like, do they keep everything off the ground? Like, all their boots off the ground when they're not on their feet? Are they hanging their bags up around the tree? It's not on the floor. Do they come later on in the evening when we're all gathering around the fire, or gathering around in a basha or a larger communal tent? Do they have their combat umbrella with them? Do they have a jacket with them and a head torch? You always know the schoolboys, because that first night and you're there, you're chatting away, you're having your food, and you're right, I'm going to go back to my hammock, and it's pitch black, and then you guys go, I haven't got my head torch, or it's like it's in that evening, absolutely lashing it down with rain, and I haven't got my combat umbrella, and then normally you dry kit by then, so then you're like, okay, my dry kit's now wet because I've got to walk all the way to my hammock. So they're like key dead giveaways. You can within the first day, and there's two ways. You have to go over and like help them and say, hey man, listen, you need to sort this out. This is what we do, and what we do around here is we take you take like a fanny pack, put some stuff in there. It's like your head torch and now ready to go because it's going to rain, and obviously you don't want to get wet. And you help them. Yeah, it's up to them if they want to listen.
Of course,
some like to learn the hard way, but you know, you do your best.
Yeah, of course. So let's say I've never been to the jungle. I really want to go. How best would I be prepared? I mean, obviously, barring the stuff we just talked about, like how would I set myself up right? Fitness-wise, health-wise, etc.
You need to be fit, man. You really do need to be fit. However, one of the things I have found is people who are super fit, but then also kind of super skinny. They don't last long in the jungle. They don't have any reserves. You need to go in there, ideally, not trim, probably for a couple of weeks before going in the jungle, I would advise. I stayed fit, but I probably carb up a bit, because you'll lose a lot of weight. Because you try and eat as much as you can in the jungle, but because of the heat and the humidity, a lot of the time you kind of lose your appetite a little bit and you don't want to eat a lot. And a lot of the time you're snacking throughout the day. The only time you really get to sit down and have a decent meal is at the evening. So technically you're only having one decent meal a day. The rest of the stuff you're having is kind of snack food or quick oats or quick breakfast. So, people... You lose a lot of weight. Like I'm talking so I've seen guys lose like 1 kilo a week.
Okay.
And just by the time they come out, they're all drawn and skinny and they don't look too good. So it's just to stay physically well. Drinking well as well in the jungle. You tend to be so busy and hot. Just make sure that your water is accessible. I find that guys obviously that have drinking straws on, drink a lot more, which is always good. Obviously, it's not drinking too much, but drinking straws handy on their kit is way better in the jungle than trying to pull out your canteen every time, because it's just a nausea. You're covered in kit and your weapon and your webbing on your backpack, and try and get into your canteen. It's just a pain, and people tend to not drink as much because of that. And then you kind of just mentally get your head in the game as well. One of the things that I used to laugh about was said, how do I know it's like to be in a jungle? I was like, go on YouTube, put your headphones on and listen to jungle sounds for 5-6 hours. Like maybe I'll try and sleep with the jungle sounds on. And I'm like, what? And like, just try it. And they're like, oh man, I couldn't sleep. I was like, welcome to the jungle, baby. I was like, get used to that. And I said, that's through the day. That's through the night, like that's background noise constant. It just goes on and on and on and on. And that's why you see, especially people who have sensitivities to noises, but it's really overwhelming, overstimulating for them, and they really, really don't like it. But yeah, that's how you prep personally. And like I said, medically, if you're going to try to prep for it, again, waterproof everything. And I'm talking waterproof your paperwork. So your TT-Tri-C cards, your nursing cards, your consultation cards, like all the good stuff that's available online through either Deployed Medicine or the PSU websites. Get them and laminate them. Laminate a few copies. And what I find is really useful is get a real fine permanent marker. So I can write on it with the permanent marker and it's bomb-proof, it's staying on there. But then I have a tiny spray bottle of nail varnish remover or acetone. So actually, if I need to reuse that paper, which a lot of the forms you can, then just quick spray, rub it down, and then it's a reusable bit of kit. So I've got the same ones that I've laminated. I've used them now for the last few years. There's only a couple of them. But I've like, normally the TT-Tri-C cards, you end up handing off to someone else, but the rest of the stuff, consultation cards and that, I reuse them. So you don't need a load of copies, you just need a few. So some little kind of hints and tips, like just make sure, prepare for everything to get wet. I'm moldy.
Any other advice for a brand new guy going in?
I think if you're going in as a medic, or whether that's military or civilian, if you're military trying to get on because trying to get on these jungle courses are noticeably difficult. They don't happen all the time. Sometimes you need to be in the right unit, but there are civilian courses out there where there's bespoke medical courses or expeditions where I would absolutely recommend going in there first with, if you've got obviously time and money, it depends if you've got that right. Depending on what country you go in, there's different courses out there where you can go away with these companies and spend, say, a week in Malaysia, Borneo, or South America or Central America, and just not have the responsibility and just being a student or a participant, where you can just get used to it, get yourself in order, get your admin in order, take your military kit with you, like as if you were going to deploy, and learn off the guys that are there, because that's where I was very fortunate again that I went on a jungle course with a civilian company in the UK, and that helped a bit. It gave me a different perspective to the military side and on how they did stuff. And then, yeah, kind of prepare yourself by talking to environmental health technicians, how they would operate in the jungle, because all those skills are coming your way. And then also how to look after the dogs in the jungle, I think is another one. So make sure your canine skills are up. The dogs are absolutely fantastic weapons of the jungle. Getting those land sharks through the trees, they're absolutely priceless. They will detect patrols from over a K away before you even think about it. So they're pretty good. And to make sure you're brushed up on your canine medicine before going away. And like I said, just doing all that research, man, you need to just become a nerd. Like really, there are certain books that are kind of useful as well. Again, if people want me to name them, I'll probably put a list together of a couple of books that are like my go-to, I would have with me to kind of support me if I'm out there. And just for reading, yeah, man, take a book with you. You spend a lot of time in your hammock, because as soon as darkness falls, right, that's you. Military operations do not happen in the jungle of a nighttime. Normally, they do in some circumstances, but a lot of time they don't because it's so dark. Even for nogs, you'll struggle. So as soon as it's dark, going around the equator, you've got like a solid 10 hours sleep every night. So that's a great thing. Yeah, I've never slept so much in my life. Sometimes I've just got too much sleep, and the guys struggle with that. So yeah, like take a good book. And keep your mind entertained and busy. It's probably kind of good, solid advice there.
Perfect. Well, I really appreciate this, Andy. And we definitely got to talk a little bit more about the jungle and, the different diseases and things like that you've run into. For today's podcast, be sure to go to our website, www.prolongfieldcare.org. Find us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Subscribe and stay on the bleeding edge of combat medicine. This is Dennis for the PFC podcast. All right.